By the Waters of Babylon. Post-apocalyptic story. We spoke before we started reading it in the building background how this is an allegory, which usually means that there's a moral to the story, there's a lesson to be taught, that the people and images and scenarios and settings and different things like that could represent something else. They stand for something beyond just the simple, common, whatever it is. Okay, it's something more, it's something deeper. And I think that maybe you probably were not able to follow along with like, oh, okay, I see the deepness of it right away. But once things are resolved at the end, and John, son of John, my father's a priest and I'm a priest, that big revelation that at the end, I mean, my gosh, humans used to fly, and now we're going through houses looking for pieces of metal. How far are we fallen? But look at what we can. We can physically do that. No, we can't. We can because we did. We've done it before. And so we will go back and do it again. And so the controversy, like we read about at the start of this was written in 1937. So it was between the two world wars. And to, the main atomic bombs, we didn't see the fallout and the development of that until after this was written. And so that the fact that this had some sort of they talk about fire from the sky, humans killed humans in mass numbers and caused the ground to be on fire. Now, it's not like campfires. It means, even years later they talked about the ground being hot. If you know anything about radiation, have you heard of Chernobyl?
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, that still has a little bit of radiation hanging around. But even after the fact, it's still there and it can still cook you. When Hiroshima and Nagasaki and all of that stuff happened, when those bombs hit, okay, if people are outside standing next to the White House, the flash and the radiation, I mean, it pretty much just cooked them. And it took like a big Polaroid flash picture where you'd see their silhouette. If they were like this, oh no. Okay? It took a silhouette on their house where afterwards, if the house was still standing, you could see an outline of that pose. Okay, it was pretty graphic and gruesome, and this was written before the knowledge of that stuff was real. So this is kind of sci-fi that turned into reality. It's like if you look back at old Star Trek episodes, they have little touchpads and touchscreens and sci-fi stuff. Well, that's before iPads, but they had that idea of we will eventually get to touch screens. Now, did they predict when it was? No, but it's innovative. And we have this being, innovated to some degree. But the devastation by this attack in this story makes the scenes depicted in Bennett's tale all the more, affecting. And it's just very, very scary. And without those flashbacks and without those visions that John has, I mean, he's sitting there talking about it's nighttime, but there are 10,000 candles going. I mean, it's New York. Were you able to pick up on that? I hope. Okay, and so it's a city, and he's in a skyscraper, and he's having this flashback vision of watching them come and go. And if you've ever been in a big city at night, does everybody shut down at 10 o'clock and go to sleep?
No.
Like in some addition somewhere? My gosh, no. You hear sirens and noise, and he talks about all the noise coming and going, and air. Oh my gosh, people are flying in carriages. People aren't walking, well, they are walking, but that's not the only mode of transportation. It talks about digging in the ground in big tunnels. Well, in a city, what are in the tunnels? Subways. There are a lot of elements, and we'll go through them here, where if you didn't know that this was Washington, that this was New York, he sees a statue of somebody named Ashing, whose hair is like a woman pulled back into a bun. I just gave it away who it is. But you've seen pictures of George Washington, right? Pulled back. Looks like a woman. And so he prayed to the god Ashing, because this guy is of some importance since he has a statue. And remember, this isn't New York City to John. This is the place of the gods. He thought he would die approaching once they see me. He thought he would die the moment he stepped on the ground and walked around the city. This is the place of the gods. The very beginning, if you want to follow along, that first paragraph, he's laying down the laws. This is way before he even, this is just the exposition. But he talks about it's forbidden to cross the great river and look upon the place that was the place of the gods. This is strictly forbidden. And there are so many rules, so many things. You can't go east. You can go north, south, and west, no problem. You cannot go east. That is forbidden. Nobody does that. Why? Scared? The gods? Maybe to cover up some secret? I mean, there are movies before where people are like, don't look behind the curtain. Yeah, I mean, Beauty and the Beast, don't go in the West Wing. Because that's where that little Rose is, and you see pictures of him and Demolished. You can go anywhere you want. Do not go in the West Wing. Well, of course, where does that person want to go? The West Wing.
You saw where to go.
Well, why can't I go? What's in there? Now here, John isn't so much, well, I'm going to go east because no one else could go east. He has these visions, these thoughts. How much of those visions or thoughts are, because he truly does want to go? Curiosity. He has these signs that show up. Okay, this white deer. He shoots this, what was it? What does he shoot in the eye? Was it a panther?
Mm-hmm.
It attacked a deer or something, right? Yeah, it killed a panther. And he shot it with one arrow right in the eye socket. That's an amazing shot. That must be a sign. And I'm fasting and I'm sitting there and all of these signs happen and come from the east. Okay, well then I must go to the east. And we see, the bird, the avian, all of these different things happen. And so you add one sign plus another, and he's able to go. My father is a priest. I am the son of a priest. I have been in the dead places. My father searches for metal. It was a dead man's house, a spirit house. Sometimes there are dead bodies in there. There are skeletons, okay, that are just right there. Because wherever the bomb goes off, if it's one big bomb or if there's several bombs, let's just say there's one bomb. Wherever the bomb goes off, that's ground zero. That's where the biggest impact is. And then it's like you drop a stone in the water and then it ripples, right? And there's still a varying degree of damage as it goes on and on and on. There was a show a while ago called 24 on Fox, if anybody ever watched it. Kiefer Sutherland always tried to stop bombs from going off. And they always had this fact that somebody wanted to put a bomb, a nuke goes off in Los Angeles, downtown. You think that'd do some damage to LA? The population? Yeah. They said, within a 3-block radius, I'm making all this up, 1 million people dead. Within a mile radius, 2-mile radius, and then the numbers kept going down. They weren't as big. But then they said, well, within 3 years, the survivors, whoever survived, they would die of radiation poisoning. So those numbers. So tens of millions of people would die. Not necessarily right then, because they would have that radiation. And so that's why in these dead places, okay, there was one time John said that he broke into some food and started eating, and the dad went nuts because it could have been damaged and there could have been some radiation. This is the thought. Now, they don't call it radiation because they can't read these books. They can't interpret this stuff. They ignore all that and they're just looking for metal for whatever reason. That's something that they can't forge. They don't have those. If you've ever seen people make iron before and steel in the factories, where you're pouring lava, hot liquid metal and molding it, these guys don't have that technology. So that metal, maybe it's weapons, maybe it's to help stabilize some shack. I don't know, but it's pretty significant and it's important. He is not. What's interesting is he's not the only child of his father. He is the son of a priest. But the moment that they decide, because the dad handed him some metal, and he didn't die. So he goes, you are now going to be a priest. I will teach you the ways of being a priest. Now that we know the story, we can look back. He could have handed that thing to anybody, couldn't he? Does the dad have any magic powers? Does a priest, being called priest, give you magic powers? No. You are kind of the leader. You are the, I don't want to say medicine man, but you are the one to be the most educated. And he said that he got treated differently. From then on, he got the best of things. He got the best of things. But also, if he messed up, did they just ignore the punishment?
No.
No, they gave it to him. And I don't mean like just, they pounded him. But he was held to a higher regard. Do you have brothers and sisters? Are you treated differently sometimes? Okay. So there's some of you, maybe, this is the wrong, it's not that your parents love one over the other, but they treat you differently for various reasons. Okay. Coaches. My dad was my baseball coach growing up. Do you think he treated me differently than the others?
Yeah.
He tried not to, right? He wants to treat everybody different. But you always want, your kid, and especially if they're being groomed for something big, you hold them to a higher standard. Okay? If you knew that your kid was going to eventually be the President of the United States, and you knew this, how? I don't know. If you knew that, hopefully you knew the lottery numbers last night. Okay? But if you knew that your kid was destined for greatness, wouldn't you raise him up differently? Hopefully you don't love him more than everybody else, but you would treat him differently and make sure that you make the right choices. And so he's brought up in that mindset that this is what I'm going to be. He was taught many things. He was finally allowed to go into dead houses by himself and search for metal, since he knows that he's not going to die. I was taught how to stop the running of blood from a wound. A priest must know many secrets. Is that a big secret? Is it? I mean, we have Band-Aids now. Now, if he's impaled by something and he's just oozing out of the stomach, I mean, that takes a doctor type stuff, but to stop blood from flowing, can't we do that? You've seen movies where they put tourniquets on it or put pressure on it. Put pressure on it. Maybe they put something hot on it to cauterize it. Is that magic? Is that a secret? To us, it's called knowledge. You know something. That's not a secret. Okay, that's not a secret. I was taught how to read in the old books and how to make the old writings. I like to hear of the old days and the stories of the God. He was interested and he had a lot of curiosity. He had these visions, these dreams, where he saw the gods walking around in their clothes, and the dad's like, tell me about it. I want to hear about it. Now I'm interested to know if there was any sort of magic mysticism in this story at all. It's these dreams that he's having, these visions, because these visions are right on, right? These flashbacks. To me, that's the only kind of magic that's in this piece, and I find that just very interesting. So he likes to think that he's educated and his tribe is very educated. Who does he think is not educated? The forest people. We're not ignorant like the forest people. We don't eat grubs from the tree. We have not forgotten the old writings. Because think about what would happen if civilization ended and had to start over. It would go like caveman, old school. Wouldn't there be tribes and factions? And some might be a little bit more advanced than others. These forest people, they're probably, I don't know how many years. Let's just say this is generations, hundreds of years after this happened. So where has education gone? Where has blah, 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 all of this stuff gone? And people they're scrounging, they have to eat. Maybe that's like Timon and Pumbaa. You're scouring for, grubs underneath stones and rocks. It's good protein. Maybe that's what you have to do to survive. And yet he thinks that he's superior over these guys. So even though civilizations ended, man's arrogance still exists. You can't defeat everything. There are a couple key words throughout here, and you didn't notice it the first time through. because you didn't know where, foreshadowing, a lot of foreshadowing is the second read through, things pop out, or pop out rather. He goes, nevertheless, my knowledge and my lack of knowledge burn in me. This isn't the only time that it talks about burning and the knowledge, and he's burning on the inside. Do you see how that's kind of an interesting choice of words, dealing with the ending on what happened? Fire from the sky, everybody burned, you were going to burn, stepping on the ground. But he has this desire inside of him, this knowledge, this yearning. I have to know. I have to know what's going on. I want to know. That's what happens in the new Indiana Jones movie. Do you see that one? The woman, the Russian at the end? Spoiler alert. Okay? She wants to know the knowledge. They say, we'll give you anything you want. And she goes, I want to know. I want to know it all. And then eventually the knowledge is overpowering and fire shoots out of her eyes and she gets whisked away, whatever. I did say spoiler alert. But what? Is Indy really going to die? No. Of course not. So anyways, he says, you know what? This is time. I'm ready for my journey. This rite, you've heard of Rite of Passages before. So-and-so has to go and do this in order to be man. Okay? In order to be a priest, in order to not be a child anymore, it must be this Rite of Passage. And the dad says, okay, tell me, where are we going? What are you doing? And so he told him about, I saw and told what I saw, his looking into the fire and the smoke, and I had this vision. So he tells him, it's a great dead place, and in it the gods walked. I've always thought about that. His eyes were stern when I told him he was no longer my father, but a priest. He said, this is a strong dream. It is mine, I said. He asked me how the gods were dressed, and I told him how they were dressed. We know how they were dressed from the book, but I saw them as if they were before me. So he has a little bit of... we were talking about the dreams and the magic, because he knows how they are dressed. Well, how? Well, he's looked through books. He's looked at pictures that have survived, and so he knows what they look like. And so is he fabricating a dream, making up? Probably not. But have you ever had a dream that felt really real? Now, you probably haven't made choices in your life based on a dream when you woke up and go, oh, wow, I must go and try to be an actor now. I just had a dream that I was in a movie. I mean, you probably haven't gone to that degree. But the father said it's a very strong dream. And here's a key line. He says, it may eat you up. Think about that. That doesn't mean kill you. It kind of means drive you crazy, make you obsessed about it. Do you think John is obsessed with this? Would you think so? Do you see how that could eat him? He's talking about the knowledge is burning inside me. I've got to know. I need to find these answers. Well, that's drive. That's eating you up. Eating you up. And the dad, for the most part, the father, the priest, says, I will not be able to keep you here, so you need to go. You need to go. He gave me the bow and 3 arrows. Take them, he said. It is forbidden to travel east. It is forbidden to cross the river. It is forbidden to go to the place of the gods. All these things are forbidden. All these things are forbidden, I said. But it was my voice that spoke, not my spirit. So, it's almost like the dad saying, don't go to the west wing or the beast, knowing that you will ultimately go. But he repeats this. John says, okay, everything's forbidden, got it. But what's his mind thinking? I really want to go east. I really want to go and see what's there. We talked about the signs. The eagle. The sign was an eagle, and it flew east. Well, I must follow that bird. Talked about the deer that passed in the valley, going east. There was a white fawn with them. Oh, well, everybody knows a white fawn is a great sign. And then a lot of times things happen in threes. Because one thing, oh, okay, well, that's an oddity. 2, oh, kind of coincidence. 3, okay, it's meant to be. That's why they use 3 a lot for signs. And so he decides to go east. It took him 8 days to ultimately get there. He had to duck some forest people who were out hunting, so he had to hide from them. Otherwise, they might have gone after him and maybe cannibalized. Who knows? But he had to duck them, and he said that the fact that he was able to duck them, oh, that was a sign as well. That was a sign. He eventually showed up at the bank of the great river. Okay? It is very long, very wide. It could eat all the streams we know and still be thirsty. Its name is Udison, the sacred, the long. No man of my tribe had seen it, not even my father the priest. It was magic, and I prayed. And so he thought he'd be dead, pretty much just laying eyes on it. Nobody from his culture has seen this river, let alone looking over at the place of the gods, which he talks about as being large towers and stuff. Now, what's this Udison? Does that look familiar? The what? The Hudson River. Did you pick up on that reading it? Maybe not, and that's fine. I'll be honest, I didn't. Reading this story, I didn't understand the post-apocalyptic. I thought it was just a story. This kid going, oh, he's going to go to some holy place. Okay, what's this going to look like? And then things started piecing together. I'm like, oh, well, this is a city. Oh, this is burned out city. Oh, okay, I got it. And then when he has the vision from the God's room, the man's room, it all starts to come together. So he eventually crosses it. Okay, he sees the place of the God looking down. They were too big to be houses, so they were towers. I knew that in another moment the gods would see me. So I covered my eyes with my hands and I crept back. So he walks out, looks, there's the place of the gods. They're going to see me. I'm going to hide. You cower back. We look at that as being kind of silly. If we were standing there kind of in spirit form watching this guy act this way, wouldn't we think that's silly? But think about how far that culture and civilization has fallen in the X number of years, and they truly believe that you'll be stricken dead just like that. He was growing up thinking, if I'm not really a priest and my dad hands me this medal, I will die. So they have this fear of death, obviously. But yet they know that it's going to happen if the gods want it to happen. If I went to the place of the gods, I would surely die. But if I did not go, I could never be at peace with my spirit again. That's really the driving force for this guy. It's that thing that his dad said is going to eat you up. It's that desire and knowledge that burns inside of you. I have to do this or I will never be able to live. Not knowing. I have to find out. And he feels, I'm walking, this is a suicidal mission. This is a one-way trip. I'm not coming back. But I have to see what's over there. And so that's why he paints himself up like death. And he crosses that river. He begins his death song as he crosses the river. I am John, son of John, I'm a hill people, blah, blah, blah. And he goes on and on and on. He's thinking he's going to die. And it's in fact magic, the river current, that takes him where it needs to go. Like it's meant to be. It's meant to be. And so he has to go to his certain death because he won't be able to live without knowing that knowledge. There's a line that's important. It is better to lose one's life than one's spirit. If one is a priest and the son of a priest. So it's better to lose a life than one's spirit. So my spirit's going to stay strong, and I might die, but my spirit's going to stay intact. This isn't the only time that we see this saying. Okay, we see it again when he's with the corpse later on, so it's very significant. When I came to the place of the gods, I was afraid, obviously, because you thought you were going to die. Never have I been so much alone. Have you seen I Am Legend? Yeah, or at least clips of that? Being in an entire city by yourself, walking around Times Square, and you're the only living soul in a city that usually has 7 million people, you're the only one. That's weird. Have you ever walked in a school by yourself when the lights are kind of off? That's weird. Isn't it? That's weird. It's a little creepy. It could be. Same type of thing. He goes, I'm alone. Imagine walking around the ruins of a city. You think, what happened here? This is where gods walk? You can imagine just slowly creeping around, looking around corners. And in New York, there are hundreds and hundreds of blocks. And so imagine the slow pace that he's going. He saw that once there had been God roads across the river, though now they were broken, fallen like broken vines. God roads across the river. What are those? Bridges. And the vines are the suspension, right? Suspension cables. And so with the bridge broken, those cables are just hanging like vines. this is when I kind of started to piece it together. I'm like, a river with roads over. Oh, I think I know what's going on. So hopefully things were kind of pieced together for you. When he was walking around, this is on that same page, 1141. It felt like ground underfoot, the place of the gods. It did not burn me. It is not true what some of the tales say, that the ground there burns forever. For I have been there. Here and there were the marks and stains of the great burning on the ruins. Well, that is true, but they were old marks and old stains. It is not true either what some of our priests say, that it is an island covered with fogs and enchantments. It is not. It is a great dead place, greater than any dead place we know. And so right away, everything that you've come to believe, oh, I'm not dead right now. The ground's not burning and there's no fog. It's a clear day. Wouldn't you start to think, if those things were wrong, what else might be wrong? What other things have your dad been preaching, or has your dad been preaching, or the culture, the common beliefs? Well, I've crossed the river and I haven't died. I'm standing here, I haven't died. There's no fog, I haven't died. All of these things are happening. It's like, well, what else is there? And so it's completely changing the way that this John is thinking and living. He said, there should have been the wailings of spirits and the shrieks of demons, but there were not. It was very silent and sunny. Grass grew in the cracks of the broken stone. If I had come there as a god, I also would have built. And so we can see why people lived there and built there. And this is pretty. This is nice. There isn't, a shriek of agony that perpetuated throughout the air. There aren't demons flying around getting you. Okay, this is contradictory to everything that we believe. Everything that we believe. Not all the towers are broken like a great tree here and there, like a great tree in the forest. Even after some natural disaster, some trees do survive, and they really stand out since everything else around them has been, leveled. And so imagine that with towers and skyscrapers. And in reading this, especially when he starts having that vision of the great burning, right? And towers start to fall. Did anybody think of some other vision? Some real thing that you lived through? Let me help you out. 9/11, towers falling. We can kind of understand. Now those weren't, or it wasn't really, well, I guess it was fire from the sky, but it wasn't being rained down like bombs like expected, but we saw what craziness happened as a result of that as it was happening. Imagine some big explosion raining down, fire raining down, whatever that looks like. And when he sees that vision and people going nuts, we can kind of see that a little bit. We see that statue ashing that I talked about. So he prays for it. He goes on to say again, and I pointed out before because I knew it was relevant, and he says it again on that next page. He goes, my hunger for knowledge burned in me. There was so much that I could not understand. All of these things, I don't know what this means. And at the end, when he says that, we're going to read, instead of going just for medals, when we go into dead places, we're going to take books. We're going to take anything, and we can't necessarily read all this, but we're going to start going through it. And we're going to start educating ourselves to the best of our ability with the knowledge of what life was like before. He has that burning inside of him now, and even there at the end, and his actions at the end are fueled by this desire. It is known that the gods did not hunt as we do. They got their food from enchanted boxes and jars. We all understand what's going on there, right? Because then he talks about how he found that sweet thing, so we can imagine it's, peaches or some other preserved fruit that was in some canister. I really like this next page. Hopefully you picked up where this was. This is where I started to go, oh, well that's like this one place, and I started piecing it together. I found it at last. He was looking around for food. The ruins of a great temple in the mid-city. A mighty temple it must have been, for the roof was painted like the sky at night with its stars. That much I could see, though the colors were faint and dim. It went down into great caves and tunnels. Do you know where he's at? Well, we established what the tunnels are, right? Trains, subways. Do you know of this one building that has the sky painted on the ceiling? Grand Central Station. And it's funny because the first time I read this story and taught it, I had been to New York the year before. And if you go to New York, you look up at the ceiling and it's like a nighttime sky. It's beautiful. Okay? Do you think they see the sky in New York City very often?
No.
Never. It's too bright. You can't see stuff. Remember in Madagascar? That's what Marty just loved about it. He goes, look, a star. It's a helicopter. No, I think it was Alex that saw the star, and then Marty said, it's a helicopter. Because they're like, oh my gosh, look at the star, it's amazing. So then when they go on the island away from the city, look at all the stars. That's why in the country you can actually see stars a lot better than in the city because it's so bright and you just can't see anything. So anyways, Grand Central Station. And so he's walking around looking. He'd go down and explore the tunnels, but he heard rats. Nah, I'm not going to go down there. But he eventually found some food. But this is where I started piecing it together. Oh, bridges across the water. Building Grand Central. Oh, Ashing, Washington, New York. I started to piece it together. Hopefully you started to piece things together as well. This dog was following him. Not like a pet, but more like, you fall asleep again, I might eat you. You know what I mean? Not scared of him at all. And they traveled as he's walking, more and more dogs come together. And right before they attack, he lunges to get inside and he saves himself. But they were coming for him. They were hunted.
You really showed that it was like, no, they were actually trying to hit him, or they were just excited to go.
Yeah, I was wondering, are they like, finally, some human, this is going to be great. But then when they finally attacked, it's like, okay, well, they were coming for him all along. They're hunting. They want to eat, they're feral dogs. Now he's in the building in the tower, okay? The little things that I point out now, this should piece it together. He walks up these staircases into this long corridor, where on one side these great big bronze doors with no handles, but on the other side there's doors with handles. Well, what's the big bronze thing with no handle that I can't just get into?
Elevator.
It's an elevator. Did you pick up on stuff like that? I hope so. So I just, let's see, I found the stairs, climbed, long corridor. So I turned to the door in the opposite side from the elevator. The lock of it was broken and I opened it and went in. Oh, within there was a place of great riches. The God who lived there must have been a powerful God. Powerful God, because no one had been in here and robbed the stuff. Some of the windows had been broken, most had not been. So he'd been preserved. And we don't know yet for another page, but he finds the body sitting there. And the body had been preserved because it had been hot or no air and oxygen to come in, whatever. But he'd still died from the fallout, the radiation over time. But the body was still, untouched. What about the painting? It's not really important in the grand scheme, but there were pictures on the wall, one of which was a flower. I remember one of a bunch of flowers in a jar. If you came close to it, you could see nothing but bits of color. But if you stood away from it, the flowers might have been picked yesterday. Have you ever seen a painting like that? Impressionism? It's just little dots. Little dots. Up close, it's just a dot. It's a dot.
Oh.
Dot, dot, dot.
Yeah.
And then you go back 10 feet,
And it's like
and it's clear. It's a picture. You see no dots because the dots kind of are together for the most part, even though there's little space. And so he's talking about this artwork that he saw, which we know later on that you look back and, wow, humans could do that too? Forest people are eating grubs. He's walking around houses, dead houses, looking for metal. You think that they're producing art like this? The answer is no. And they're not flying, and they're not doing several other wonderful things that humans were able to do. And so we see that, we see just another thing here. How about this stuff? It was kind of funny. There was a washing place, but there's no water. So I can see that there's a sink there. He doesn't know it's a sink, but there's a place to wash, but there's no water. Well, how am I going to wash? There were things that looked like lamps, but they had neither oil nor wick. All of these things were magic. Well, what are those things? Lamps. Okay. But there's no place to light them. What is this big weird thing? What about in the washing place, the thing said hot, but it was not hot to touch. Another thing said cold, but it was not cold. But what's that?
Awesome.
Little faucets. Did you pick up on this stuff yet? You know, that time reading it, like, oh, that sounds like a faucet. No. He made a place. There was a place to make fire, and a box with wood in it, though I do not think they cooked there. So a fireplace. So that's where he made his fire and slept for the night. But what do they associate fire in his culture with? Cooking. Warm. So this fireplace, there's no place to cook. And so we see the big difference in these two civilizations. The bottom of 1144, for those following along. He had this dream, this vision. He says that I had stepped out of my body. I could see my body asleep in front of the cold fire, but it was not I. I was drawn to look out upon the city of the gods. It should have been dark, for it was night, but it was not dark. Everywhere there were lights, lines of light, circles and blurs of light. 10,000 torches would not have been the same. Blah, blah, blah. I knew that I was seeing as it had been, where the gods were alive. Everywhere went the gods on foot and in chariots. Chariots blocked the street. They had turned night to day for their pleasure. So instead of going to sleep at night, they're still having fun, they're still doing things, they're still living. So they've turned night into day because they could, because they wanted to. And hopefully you were picturing, a crowded New York street from your movies. The noise of their coming and going was the noise of many waters. The great vines of their bridges were mended, and the god roads went east and west. They burrowed tunnels under rivers. They flew in the air. No part of the earth was safe from them. Meaning, the humans could go anywhere and do anything. But in retrospect, do you like that line, that choice of words? No part of the earth was safe from them. Think that huge atomic catastrophe, whatever it was, they might have thought they were safe. But that's an interesting choice of words, because truly they're not. And that's what was so scary about the atomic age, was we have a red button that we could push that sends these nukes to Russia or Cuba or wherever. But do you think that they don't have a red button too? The moment something's come their way, well, they're going to push their button. And all their stuff. So you can imagine them crisscrossing in the sky whoosh, as they're going to their separate targets. No place was safe. No place was safe. The great destruction happened. That was key. Then I saw the fate come upon them, and that was terrible past speech. It came upon them as they walked the streets of their city. I have been in the fights with the forest people. I have seen men die. But this was not like that. When gods war with gods, they used weapons we do not know. It was fire falling out of the sky and a mist that poisoned. So nowadays, and remember, this is before those atomic bombs and stuff. So this was just like his worst nightmare. The writer, Benet's worst nightmare about what the humans killing humans could look like. Now today, this should look pretty familiar. Have you heard of chemical warfare?
Yeah.
Okay, that could be that mist. I mean, you talk about a bomb just being detonated over a city where the impact doesn't hurt people, but the mist would kill everybody. But here, the mist could be that. It could be simply the radiation that gets people beyond just the simple explosion. So it could be one of many things, but ultimately it results in death of the gods. It was fire falling out of the sky and a mist that poisoned. It was the time of the great burning and the destruction. They ran about like ants in the streets of their city. Poor gods, poor gods. Then the towers began to fall. A few escaped, yes, a few, the legends tell it. But even after the city had become a dead place, for many years the poison was still in the ground. And that's where that radiation still stuck around. I saw it happen. I saw the last of them die. It was the darkness over the broken city, and I wept for the sadness. He still doesn't know that these are men yet. But, oh, gods, what did you do? Oh, it's horrible. Some people escaped, some gods escaped. But as we know from our discussions a bit ago, but you may have known before, just because you escape a destruction doesn't mean that, that radiation or whatever it is, that you will survive. And imagine if there was something that was a contamination, plagues, the zombie apocalypse as a modern day example. But what if there's a plague? They put some sort of plague on that island and people did escape. You see how the plague could escape and get more and more people? And that would kind of wipe out. If you saw the new Planet of the Apes movie, that's what's happening at the very end. It starts with one person. He sneezes, gets around. Spoiler alert. At the end, they give it a pilot has the sickness. He's walking around an airport. Unbeknownst to anyone else, they're getting affected. Well, isn't the airport probably the worst place you can get it? Because everybody's getting on 300 different flights going to 300 different points of the world. So then they'll affect everybody at that airport. And those people at that airport might go to 500 other places. You see how it's not going to take long for that to spread? So imagine that could have been what wiped out a bunch of people. Who knows? In wrapping this up, he says that I knew the reason for the dead places, but I did not see why it had happened. You'd see the result, but you didn't know how that happened. It seemed to me it should not have happened with all the magic yet. And so here's where we get to that allegory, folks, the moral of the story. Look at how wonderful their civilization was. They had all that magic. How could they possibly get to that point? How could they possibly get to the point where they kill each other in such mass numbers? You see how it can be a commentary not just on arms races and stuff, but it can be a commentary on war, a commentary on our civilization. That's that moral. Okay, and that's you have this semi-uneducated individual who's coming up with this. And so if he can come up with this, shouldn't we, the readers, be able to come up with this? Being educated and having these magics at our disposal, shouldn't we be able to build a world and sustain a world, not end it? Here was kind of a big, that was kind of the climax of the story, including this next part, which I like, because for a while I'm like, oh, is there really a God? Maybe I was wrong. But he says, then I saw the dead God. He was sitting in his chair by the window in a room. I had not entered before, and for the first moment, I thought he was alive. And then I noticed his skin, and I could tell that he was dead. Okay? He was dead, looking out the window. There was wisdom in his face and great sadness. You could see that he would have not run away. He wouldn't have been one of those people fleeing. He would have been there and took whatever came. And here's that second statement of better to lose one's life than one's soul. He had sat at his window, watching his city die. Then he himself had died. But it is better to lose one's life than one's spirit. And you could see from the face that his spirit had not been lost. I knew that if I touched him, he would fall into dust, and yet there was something unconquered in the face. There was something defiant. Even though he was dead, there was something that John was able to read in the corpse's face that showed that his spirit, in the face of certain destruction and doom, had not been conquered. Wow. What a strong will. And for the first time, folks, this is important. It's not, wow, look at that God and how strong and confident and resilient that God is and how defiant he holds on to his spirit. That God that we've been worshiping, we haven't been worshiping God. Who have we been worshiping? Man. We've been worshiping people like us. Wait a minute, so we can do this magic and we're able to do that? Do you see how that burning, it's just like they just threw a bunch of gas onto his burning desire and his search for knowledge. That is all my story. For then I knew he was a man. I knew then that they had been men, neither gods nor demons. It is a great knowledge. Hard to tell. Hard to believe. Because who's gonna believe him? He almost can't believe it for himself. He had to physically see it. Well, can he bring other people there? Are people going to readily want to come to the place that they should have, that they're going to die with demons flying around? They're probably not going to want to come. And so it's hard to believe, and it's going to be hard to tell. They were men. They went a dark road, but they were men. I had no fear after that. I had no fear going home. Though twice I fought off the dogs, and once I was hunted for 2 days by the forest people. But other than that, I wasn't scared. He finally goes home. You went away a boy. You come back a man and a priest. I said to my father, Father, they were men. I have been in the place of the gods and seen it. Now slay me if it is the law. But still I know they were men. He looked at me out of both eyes. He said, the law is not always the same shape. You have done what you have done. I could not have done it in my time, but you come after me. Tell me what you saw. I want to know. I told him and he listened. After that, and this is so important, folks, you understand this. He goes, after that, I wished to tell all the people. But he showed me otherwise. He said, truth is a hard deer to hunt. If you eat too much truth at once, you may die of the truth. It was not idly that our fathers forbade the dead places. Think about this, John. You have some vast knowledge and you want to share it, but be careful. Too much truth too soon can be deadly. Our forefathers, our generations, told us not to go there for a reason. Think about that. Why do you think that? Why do you think that? And so, John, the young John, son of John, it is better that the truth should come little by little. Perhaps in the old days, they ate knowledge too fast. So maybe the humans, they ate their knowledge too fast for advancement and wanting to find and do things and advance, and eventually they created weapons, and eventually all of these things happened. So maybe we should learn from their mistakes, because they obviously died and had a huge mistake. Okay? So maybe we won't go as fast as they did. So let's go little by little. Nevertheless, we make a beginning. It is not for the metal alone we go to the dead places now. There are the books and the writings. They are hard to learn, and the magic tools are broken, but we can look at them and wonder. At least we make a beginning. We're not going to keep doing the same stuff we do generation after generation. Let's embrace this new knowledge, and let's do something with it. It's a beginning. And when I am chief priest, we shall go beyond the great river. We shall go to the place of the gods, the place New York. Not one man, but a company. So we will all go. We shall look for the images of the gods and find the god Ashing and the others. And hopefully these footnotes help you. The gods Lincoln and Biltmore and Moses. But they were men who built the city, not gods or demons. They were men. I remember the dead man's face. They were men who were here before us. We must build again. Now he's not talking, let's just go rebuild the towers and go. Because are they going to lack the technology and the skill to build towers?
Yeah.
Yes. Obviously. They will. When they go from the hills to building, they need to start. And that's why they're going to educate themselves with the books and any other tools and fix them and do what they can. Their civilization is starting over. Before John went across the river, their civilization wasn't starting. It was just perpetually doing nothing, doing nothing, doing nothing. But we will start. We will start. And hopefully, eventually, it's wisdom that people hear from him instead of craziness. What? We're going to fly, we're going to have train, we're going to do all these things? Well, probably we're not. Probably generations down the road. It's like when they start, maybe it's like going back to 1620 when the Pilgrims showed up in the land. The Pilgrims didn't know what the future had in store for them and what they could do. Here, he knows what we could do. Is he going to happen in his lifetime? I really doubt it. But look at we have this end goal that we've been to in our humans in history. We can get there again, and maybe we can learn from their mistakes and surpass it and go to the next stage. That's ultimately the goal. And so maybe in our present day situation, let's imagine that we're just thrown back 400 years. So it might take 400 years to get back because they have to get educated. They need to study their math and their science. And if they don't know that, they have to make it up and learn it. So their culture will probably be different. Remember Sound of Thunder, how things change just because of butterfly? Imagine rebooting an entire civilization and giving it a do-over. They might make the same mistakes. They might make different ones. So 400 years into their future, it might look completely different. Wouldn't you be curious to see what that would be? Maybe they're not even on the planet anymore. Maybe they've gone wherever. Who knows? Who knows? But they're men. They will build. And there's, like he said, it's a beginning. It's a beginning. So I hope you really enjoyed it. Okay, I know it was kind of a long one. I think, and we did this in the past where I had a lot of students read it a second time on their own, and they really enjoyed it because they saw those little things that we pointed out, but in greater detail and a bigger subtext, an undertone they understood greater, and all these foreshadowings and all those things talking about burning. I just had to, and they understood it more. But this is what we call an allegory. There's a moral to the purpose. These things stand for, these things in here, the images, the people, the things being said, they stand for something on a greater level than just the entertainment of the story. So it's a key allegorical piece of literature that's pretty well known. So.